introduction, what do you call that, session, okay, right, with our first class. I would like to know my students because, I don't really see you on face to face. So at least if had some kind of like connection online, I can get to know you a bit. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a look at our slides. Okay, our first lesson is on humanism, and this is a general theory because a lot of the other smaller theories come under this, like, for example, feminism. There is feminist humanism, feminist humanism and a post-structuralist. Humanist feminism and post-structuralist feminism. Yeah? There's humanist, basically humanist feminism and post-structuralist feminism, and I'm not really sure about the other things. I don't think there are that many things. Yes, existentialism also falls under humanism, but we're not going to study that. So it is a wider theory that encompasses a lot of the smaller theories, and it is can say that it's the first theory to be discovered because the person who discovered it are the classical figures like Aristotle and Plato, who lived during the Greek period. So humanism is a worldview of perspective, or a theory. It's the same thing, worldview, perspective, theory, that rejects anything supernatural as an explanation for existing phenomena. So it comes from the word human, and according to the humanists, how we know the world boils down to how we perceive the world through our senses. So we have 5 senses, so we can understand the world through our 5 senses. Obviously, something that cannot be seen, like God, for example, or ghosts, or anything that cannot be felt, also cannot be tested. Like COVID cannot be seen, but it can be tested, right? By our senses, we can pick up COVID from testing, what do you call that, mechanisms. We can test COVID. We know that it's there. So these things are accepted as reality for the humanists. Humanists do not accept God, for example, as real because they cannot see it. And in Western science, humanism is the founding principle because Western science believes that everything that can be experienced is testable. You can test it. You can see whether it's there or not. So it is considered scientific. Everything that can be seen can be considered scientific. Can be acknowledged as as existing. And now, in Islam we have in Arabic language we have the word ulum for science, and ulum actually means knowledge, and not the knowledge of what we can see only, but also what we cannot see. So knowledge of God, or knowledge of malaikat, and so on. So our Muslim perception of science is a bit different from Western perception. It's not a bit different, it's a lot different from Western science, because we also believe in something that we cannot see. Now back to this literary criticism, as I've said before in my earlier class, is founded by Westerners. So we have to go back to Western humanism to understand literary criticism, and it is secular also. So 19th century historians claim that it began with the Renaissance, with the flowering of art, literature, and science. Renaissance was the period that started in the 14th century and up until the 17th century. And during this period, no, I'm sorry, up to the 16th century. During this period, the Renaissance period, um, there was there were a lot of discoveries being made in sciences, in literature, in arts. So various discoveries were being made during this time. And if you have heard of the term before, Renaissance man, okay, if you have heard of the phrase, or yeah, I guess you can say that it's the phrase Renaissance man. It means somebody who has excelled in more than one field of study, and can find this person in Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci created the helicopter. He drew the first structure of the helicopter, the most primitive structure of the helicopter. Nobody knows whether he actually created a helicopter out of that structure, but his drawing showed that he is one of the first to draw a helicopter, and also the painter of Mona Lisa. Okay? So he is a man of multiple talents, and we call this man of multiple talents a Renaissance man. Okay? So it shows to you how during the Renaissance, you can be talented in many fields, and many fields actually grew and developed during this age in Europe. Now, the values of humanism are the power of rational thought and the authority of science. Now, during this time also, scientific discoveries will be made, and one such discovery was the creation of a telescope, and the discovery made by Copernicus. Copernicus discovered that the Earth revolved around the sun. Okay? So this was proven to him through the use of his primitive telescope, a more primitive form of the telescope, and um, and this finding was against the teachings of the church. The church said that planet Earth, um, everything revolved around the planet Earth, around our planet Earth, around man actually. So this was in the Bible. So it was against the findings of Copernicus went against the Bible. So at that time, people still believe in their religion, but increasingly, science and religion began to clash. They were clashing together. The findings of science defied or challenged the ideas propagated by the Bible. So humanism replaced the importance of God as the center of the universe in place of the idea of the human mind as the supreme power of knowledge and creation. So this is how the secular science, this is how secular science was uh, born, the rejection of God. Now, before we talk more about the Renaissance period, let's go back to the very basis of humanism. The people who founded it. And this man is the founder of humanism, although he also believed in God. His name is Plato, and I think maybe some of you have heard about him before. He's a large man, a broad-chested man, and he's called Plato, not because it's his actual name. Plato is his nickname. It's not his actual name. And Plato means it could the word it has affiliation or connected to the idea of a plate. A plate, a large surface, and that's because his body is quite large. It's well built. It's a well built man, and he's the student. He was the student of Socrates. Socrates is the first philosopher in Western science and Western philosophy. Socrates was actually a slave, and later he became free, but he could never read. He was illiterate. He couldn't write. So Plato was the first to write about Socrates, and many of his writings go back to Socrates. Socrates was a character appearing and reappearing in many of Plato's work and functions. Socrates functions as a mentor, yeah, to his students, including Plato. Plato was his student as well. So um, Plato also had a lot to say about literature, and in fact, he was the first to say something about literature because at that time, Greek plays were famous, and many people used to go to the amphitheaters to watch these plays. So Plato observed that there were many types of plays, epics, comedies, tragedies. They were performed through storytelling and actors acting out specific scenes. So they had actors, you know, um, becoming somewhat like a role model for society. Yeah? And to this day, we have this concern. We don't want our children to watch too much television because we are afraid that they will copy, yeah? The actions of the actors and so on. Yeah? So Plato had the same concern. He was afraid that society would be influenced by the way the actors act. Okay. And can you tell me, okay, here I had said in my earlier class that I will give 1 mark for any questions that I am going to ask you, and then if you have the correct answer, if you give me the correct answer, I will give you 1 mark. So this is one question that I want to ask. Anyone can answer this. If you put your hands up, it'll be easier for me to see who you are. Okay. So can you name one play that that shows that was famous during that time, and can you give me a short description of the play? Yeah? Anyone here? Can anyone here name one play and give me a short description of what happens in the play during the time of the Greeks, ancient Greece? Can somebody? Okay, Haruni. Yeah?
It's I'm not really sure the real name of the play, but it's about Medea.
Mm-hmm.
It's about it's a tragedy. It's about this one witch that she was plotting a revenge against her husband because her husband Jason uh was like stabbed her in the back because even though she sacrificed a lot for him, but then her husband still wanted to marry the princess of this one country. I don't remember that country. Yeah, and like one of the things that she did in that play was that she even killed her own children so that her husband would suffer. So
Yeah.
like that was her form of revenge towards her
Okay,
husband.
so thank you. I've given you 1 mark.
Thank you.
That's right. The play is actually entitled Medea also. So this is a play about infanticide, the killing of children, yeah, by their own mother. Normally we hear, it's rare to find the mothers killing their children. Yeah? Normally because we expect the mother to become protectors of the children. But in this play, a woman is so incensed by her husband's behavior that she kills her own children, her sons, I think 2 of her sons. So, is it, when we look at this type of behavior, is it something that you can emulate and can copy? No, obviously not, right? It's horrible behavior. It's a crime, to kill one's child or one's children. And Plato was concerned because such plays are not really demonstrating good behavior. Okay? And there is also Oedipus Rex. Oedipus is a very famous play, right? And I think by Sophocles. And in Oedipus Rex, the son marries his own mother because although he didn't intend and he didn't know that she was his mother, he had married her because of some kind of destiny. Yeah? He was predestined to marry his own mother. Okay. So this type of plays were not good models of behavior. They provide good models of behavior for their audience. Uh, okay, so Plato thought that these epic tragedies, comedies were not models of good behavior. Um, there are inferior ways of passing cultural values and demonstrating the best ways of being. And they also appeal to reason over emotion. Of course, Medea killed her children because she was too emotional. She didn't use her reason. So Plato did not like the stories because of that. Another reason why he didn't think that the play was good enough for its audience because um, this insistence that his insistence that reason was better than emotion or is better than emotion. He believed that reason was better than emotion because in reality, according to him, resided in forms that are unchanging and eternal rather than in this world which is chaotic and ever changing. Now, he was a man of knowledge and was always asking himself, what is real? What is the nature of reality? And so on. So he he thought that reason was unchanging. It remains the same. Your reason, the way you think, remain the same. So, and then the way you feel, your emotion changes over time. So he thought that things that do not change will provide you with reality, will provide you with the truth. Okay? So he preferred reason over emotion. And as we all know, in the arts, playwrights capitalize on their ability to evoke certain emotions in their audiences. Okay, so if they fail to do this, then they have failed as playwrights. So Plato did not like these playwrights because they wanted to evoke certain emotions. That Plato said, you don't need to be emotional to know about the world. You have only to use your reason to know about this world and so on. So this was one of his reasons. Now, can I ask another question? How do you think this world functions? Do we live in a world that is changing or unchanging? Can anyone tell me? This is a very simple one. Mm, what do you think? Okay, Wala? Yes?
I think that the state of this, the nature of this world is that it is ever changing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not the composition. I mean, the composition might change by nature, but what lives within the world, such as what defines this and that, determined by intellects and academicians, they will always evolve over time.
Okay, so this world is always evolving, always changing, right? Always in the process of changing. Everything changes. Actually, you can see that our body also changes over time. Our intellect could change also, right? The way we think, we become more mature. Okay, so to Plato, this world hence is not really. It doesn't have truth in it. It's not real because it changes. Mhm. Now, this is his idea. Remember that these people, Plato, Aristotle, they are people. They have ideas that can be challenged. You can say, okay, Plato, you're wrong. Okay, if things change or human change, that doesn't mean that they are not real. Okay? So you can have arguments with these people. Then no such thing as um, you know the true answer. Okay, an answer can be challenged. In this study of literary theory and literary criticism, you can argue against a case or for a case. So this world is not real according to Plato. It changes. Now he said also that this world uh, also it's a copy of something else, and that is ideal world, another world, wherein everything remains the same. For example, if you can find a boy in this world, the boy will become a man after several years. But in this ideal world, there is a young boy, okay, an exact young boy. And if you can find a chair in this world, in the other world, you can find a chair, the same chair. It's such, in my other class, they said, okay, then what you mean is in the other world is like a parallel universe to ours, right? Yeah, in that sense, um, there is another world that is parallel to ours. Okay. So how can we know that about this world? According to Plato, we can understand it through reason, and more specifically through something called contemplation. Contemplation is like using your reason and then thinking about the other world, the ideal world. Then you can understand it. You cannot see it, but you can understand it through using your contemplation. Okay, through contemplation. So, poets and dramatists, according to Plato, to provide us with knowledge of how to behave because they base their writings on observation of this world, which is an illusion, and what they produce is a copy of a copy. Okay, because this world is a copy of the ideal world. So when they write about this world, they are producing another copy of this world. So what happens? You know, if you ask anybody, um, are copies do copies have the same um, worth as the original? Most people would say no, because copies are not as priceless as the original. Okay, they don't have the same price. They don't have the same value. The original is always more value than the copy. So this is how Plato also believed the work of artists to be. He doesn't believe that their work is has a lot of value. Okay? It's just a copy of this ideal world, double copy. You want to use the word, and he calls this double copy mimesis. Now, before we go on to that, yeah, we go to this slide. The objects of this world are many copies that exist in the ideal realm. For Plato, all forms of art only created pictures of the material, perceivable world, nature. This world is nature. Nature itself is a copy of the ideal world. And the act of copying is called mimesis. Now, that Plato doesn't use the word copy, he uses the word mimesis, or which comes from the word mimic. Okay, so in okay, Plato, because of his Plato's impact has been great on thinkers across the centuries, and there are movies that are being created, okay, um, about Plato's ideas with regards to ideal world and this world. And you can see this in the Matrix. The Matrix has the clearest expression of the ideal world as opposed to the real world, the world that we live in, which is an illusion. Matrix, I think most of you would have heard of this movie before, right? Or this series of movies. Um, it stars Keanu Reeves. Yeah, in the Matrix we have the world. The I not actually it's not an ideal world, but it's the real world, the actual truthful world, and the illusionary world. Um, in which we live in which mankind lives in. Okay? So another idea that has sprung from Plato's discussion about ideal world and copies and so on is cloning. cloning is something that can be related back to Plato also. Um, Nowadays we are talking about sheep being cloned. Uh, the a sheep had been cloned from the original. So people in China say, I think I've heard of babies being cloned. Okay, so cloning is also going back to the idea of copies, making copies of it from the original. Um, for Plato, because artists work to stimulate emotion through copy nature, artists were associated with irrational madness and forces that are potentially disruptive and dangerous. He was actually calling for all artists and playwrights and so on to be expelled from Greece. He wanted them to be expelled from Greece, to be thrown out of the country. Um, the country in which Plato lived in, the Greece that Plato had lived in, was also at the war with Sparta. So Sparta is actually an area um, near Greece. They were at war, and Plato wanted Greeks to be very rational, because he viewed people who are full of emotion to be irrational and cannot be relied upon to fight for the country. Okay, so at long last, actually, Greece was also defeated by the Spartans. So this fear that Plato had um, for the future of Greece was very real, that is during his time. And here we have in this slide we know that Plato was worried that art and artists might threaten social order also, um, because they might distract a citizen from the pursuit of eternal truth. And he doesn't believe that this world has truth in it. And Plato worried that art, including literary art like poetry and drama, tells lies also and influences its audience in negative ways. Now, his concern begins a tradition of literary criticism called moral criticism, because he was concerned with the moral lesson that um, any piece of literary writing had to convey to their audience, okay, or its audience. Okay. So um, let's have a look at this picture here. This is a picture of philosophers. Actually, it is a smaller picture, okay, um, a snippet, or it's taken from a larger picture of philosophers. And these two are philosophers. Plato, as you can see here, the older man, and then the young man is Aristotle, his famous student. And both are philosophers. As you can see from the picture, a picture can tell many stories. So they are both uh, carrying books. That means they are both men of knowledge. Okay, so one is pointing upwards to the ideal world, another one pointing downwards towards the earth. Because Aristotle was interested in what was going on in this earth, what can be seen. He is actually the father of Western science, because he is concerned with what can be seen and experienced and so on. So here, Aristotle, we are told that Aristotle is Plato's most famous student. He was less interested in the content of literature than its form. He was more concerned with the form of literature. He wrote Poetics, in which he argued that art is not just a copy of nature, therefore not inferior to nature. Rather, art is a process of putting the events of nature into a medium that improves on or completes on nature. Okay? So, art is supposed to improve on nature. Can somebody tell me at this point how art can improve on nature? What are the examples that we can see um, in which art improves on nature? Can somebody tell me? Somebody? Yeah, there are many examples of art. No? Um, a picture, a photo can be an art piece, okay? Um, a
Can
drawing, of course, yes.
can it be a building, doctor?
Now, Farisha, yes.
Can art building when we building?
A building, right? A
Mm.
picture of a building, yeah, that hasn't been built yet, right? Okay, yes, it can be improving on nature. And have a landscape artist draw a picture of a garden, for example, with the building and so on, and it will make the place more beautiful. Yes, that's one obvious example. But you can have many other examples. For example, your photo. You know, when in your WhatsApp, you have your own profile, right? And a photo inside the profile. Now you can create something new. It doesn't have to be an actual portrayal of your face. You can make your face through certain apps. You can make it more beautiful. Okay, so that is a work of art also, and you can use also makeup. Makeup is allows you to um, shield your blemishes, make yourself more beautiful, more enticing, right? More attractive. Okay, so this is one way in which art improves on nature, right? Okay. Now, obviously, this act is also very controversial. If you try to improve on nature too much, then what is natural anymore? Okay, everything is made up, huh? And sometimes we disappointed when you look at the person, and then if you look at the person with the makeup and then without the makeup, you can find that there are uh, significant differences. Okay, a man, for example, looking for a beautiful lady might be cheated into marrying an ugly lady. Okay, and vice versa. Yeah? A woman can also be cheated into marrying uh, a man whom she thinks is handsome but turns out to be not so handsome. Okay, so it allows you to lie also. This is um, the nature of art. Um, so art does not lie. This is what Aristotle said. It does not lie, just reveal truth in a different way. Okay. So he's against this idea that art lies, but obviously this is wrong. Aristotle, you are wrong. Yeah? Art does lie, um, but it depends which type of art they're talking about. Art is not a binary opposite of reason. Reality is an ever-changing world of appearances and perceptions. A form of reality only appears in concrete form, so Aristotle does not believe in the existence of the ideal world. Now, he was a student of Plato, and everything here is against what Plato has mentioned. So, during his time, it was okay, and it's still okay to be different, as long as you are respectable. I mean, not respectable, as long as you respect your teachers. Okay, so it's okay to have a different idea. And in criticism, we encourage people to have different ideas because it marks their contribution, okay, to the field of knowledge. Now, for Aristotle, reality is an ever-changing world. A reality being, if we undergo changes, it doesn't mean that we are less real than something that doesn't undergo any change. So in man's world, things exist according to ordered principles, which we can discover. The truth resides in discovering the rules and principles that govern how things work. Aristotle is interested in observing specific phenomena and then deducing from those observations the rule that govern a specific phenomenon. So he was looking at the earth and then making discoveries about the rules that govern certain things that happen on earth. So this is he is then the founder of Western science. Aristotle desires to catalog and classify things of the material world, discover similarities and differences. This is how we classify things. When we discover that they have similarities, and also we differentiate them from other things by discovering their differences. Aristotle treats poetry in the same way. He discovered a few the different types of poetry. And he is the father of a type of literary criticism called genre criticism, wherein you have to make certain distinction between um, what type of genre certain writings fall under. Okay, so he was also making this discovery about comedies and tragedies. Was saying that certain plays can be called comedy, but others are tragedy. So comedy also must deal with common people. Tragedy must deal with nobility. So when I first look into this, I when I started to question myself, why isn't the death of common people considered a tragedy? Isn't it tragedy if a Malaysian family, a middle class Malaysian family loses 5 of its members due to COVID? Isn't that a tragedy? Isn't that tragic? Okay. Most people say that, yes, that is tragic, right? I mean, to have your mother, father, and sister die of COVID, that's horrible. Okay. But during Aristotle's time, you have to remember that every day uh, the population would watch fights in their Colosseum between the gladiators and other types of slaves. Gladiators were slaves. And I think you know what gladiators are. They are people that are like warriors who fight for entertainment, to provide a sort of entertainment to the people who are watching them. And they die every day. They can die every day. So common people, slaves especially, they die every day. So their deaths are not considered tragic. Only those that involve the nobilities are considered tragic. Okay, and comedy here, you can't. Why do they have to do with common people? Because you cannot make fun of the nobility. It would be a disaster to do that. Um, you can get into trouble if you make fun of the nobility. So they have to do with common people. Art is not inferior to nature because art imposes order on what might otherwise be disordered and chaotic natural world. So another idea that Aristotle came up with is that art is not an inferior form of um, copy, it's not inferior to nature because it tells you how to feel. Okay, what do I mean by this? If you go to galleries, you find pictures of beaches, for example. The Malays, they love to write, or not write, but they love to draw pictures of beaches because we live near the sea. And in these pictures, you always get a sense of contentment, of happiness when you see beaches. So the artist tells you how to feel about a certain thing. Um, and old houses, for example, they are always scary. Okay. So who created this kind of feeling? Who structured this or made this association between um, being scary and or being scared and an old house? It's the artist. The artist creates our imagination, gives shape to it by um, portraying the old house as a place that is full of ghosts, for example. So an artist can actually give order to a certain emotion. Okay? And scientific observation and formulation for general rules create order, rationality, and sense. So art makes order of the various emotions and sensory experiences that we have every day. Art also completes a process that the natural world lives in complete nature, merely presents us with events, phenomena, and so on, but art gives meaning to them. Art creates a positive social force if you want to. If you look at several places, for example, a hotel, 2 hotel rooms. If you go to one hotel room that is a 3-star hotel, okay, that's from a 3-star hotel, you can find a bed and basically the same thing or the same things that you can find in a 5-star hotel. Okay, but in a 5-star hotel, there will be more ornaments on the wall. Okay, there will be the carpet will be more colorful. Okay, uh, and they will, they will really make the place look nicer than in the 3-star hotel. So, you can see from this example that art can play uh, a major role in enhancing um, a country's economy or the hotel's economy, because through um, through artistic expressions, it can make a place more beautiful and therefore earn more money for the person who built the place. Yeah? So, art does make money. It's not true to say that art doesn't make money. Art actually makes money. Okay? But somehow our society do not see artists and art in the same way as many people in the West. You can make money from art. So hence Plato versus Aristotle, the concern with content and effect of a work versus the content with form and unity of a work of art. So you can see here that the two thinkers have vastly very different ideas, but they work together. They're not really they were not enemies to each other. They respected each other. So this is the spirit that we want to cultivate in literature. The ability to criticize without being disagreeable. So let's have a look at another slide. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. So I need to get out from this. This is what happens. This is something that happens sometimes that I cannot get out of this. Okay. Okay, there you go. So let's have a look at the second slide, Humanism Part 2. So in this one, let me show it to you. In this one, we have basically a continuation of what we had studied before with regards to Plato's and Aristotle's ideas. Now, in Humanism Part 2, there's another poet who lived during the Greek era, and he is Horace. And what he had to say about poetry is that he said it is entertaining, it should be entertaining, and also provide education for those who are listening to the poems. Yeah? So he wrote Ars Poetica, and he said poetry, the purpose of poetry is always dulce et utile. Dulce means sweet and utile useful. What it means by useful is educational, and dulce means entertaining. Okay, so he was the first to say that poetry should be educational, to teach. And he was also saying that the pleasures of poetry make it popular and accessible, and therefore the lesson that it teaches can be understood by many. And he was also arguing that poets can imitate other poets, other artists, and copy their own literary form, and so on. So, and then we come across another person, Plotinus, his name. And Plotinus was an Egyptian, was born in Egypt, and he studied philosophy at Alexandria or Scandaria in Egypt. And then he went to become, or he joined the Roman army before making his way to Rome, okay, and then dying there. He was the founder of the school called Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism was was what the 19th century European called the school, because they drew the word neo from new and Platonism from Plato. Okay? So Plato said that this world is full of an illusion, right? The world is an illusion. And Neoplatonism argues that the world is an emanation from an ultimate indivisible being, from God. Yeah? The world is made by God and also carries within it the spirit of God. And then we are capable, whatever is in this world is capable of being united with this God, yeah, to trance and ecstasy. Now, this is his belief. So it postulated that an all-sufficient unity, the one from which emanated the divine mind, and below that the world soul. So you're saying that basically God has a mind and a soul, and we can become one. He was saying that humans can become one with this soul through contemplation, through thinking. So we become one again. And I'm just mentioning this because it has something to do with the way certain people in the Muslim world thought about reality, yeah? That they can be, that human beings can be united with God through contemplation. And Hamzah Fansuri was a Sumatran poet, okay, Malay poet, and he's one of the what do you call that, famous poet in Malay literature, and he was a believer in Wahdatul Wujud. In this idea, Wahdatul Wujud is a sophistic school. Okay, um, it's one of the sophistic schools that believe that mankind can be united with God um, by contemplation. So Hamzah Fansuri wrote many poems that shows his belief. And as you can see here, mankind is described as a drop of water that slips into the ocean. Okay, that becomes one with God. But this belief is not acceptable to common Muslims, as another poet, Muhammad Iqbal, has shown. Because some of the believers of Wahdatul Wujud, they believe that if you believe in Wahdatul Wujud and this idea that you can be united with God, you do not have to pray, okay? Because you're already part of God. You have to contemplate only. You just contemplate, that's okay. You don't have to pray. So this this idea of Wahdatul Wujud met with certain objections from Muslims like Muhammad Iqbal. Okay, now going back, jumping across time to the Renaissance period, we meet again with translations of Aristotle's Poetics and so on, and other figures like Sir Philip Sidney. Sir Philip Sidney, if you look at this collar, definitely a very distinctive collar coming from the Elizabethan period, and he lived in the Elizabethan period. Elizabethan period was the period in British history wherein a queen ruled the country, not a king. Her name was Elizabeth. Okay? The first Elizabeth, not the second. The second one is reigning now. Okay? So he wrote an apology for poetry. An apology is, whenever you use the word apology, it means to say, okay, I'm sorry, right? Okay, I'm sorry. There is an apology for in today's world. But during his time, it wasn't about apologizing. It's more about defending something. Okay, so the meaning of apology has really changed, from defending to apologizing. So in his time, he wrote a book defending poetic art because it was under attack by a Puritan critic. A Puritan critic is a Puritan is a denomination under Protestantism. And Protestantism is a sect in Christianity as opposed to Catholicism. There are two sects. Like we are, Muslims have Shia and Sunni. They have Protestants and Catholics. Okay, so Puritans are the more extreme sect denomination in Christianity, they don't believe in being or in leading a life that is full of pleasure. They try to live without pleasure. Okay, they wear black clothing. Maybe perhaps you have encountered them when you did American literature. Maybe some of you did American literature. Okay, those early Americans were Puritans who fled Britain, yeah? And they followed Plato. Puritans followed Plato by arguing that poetry is a waste of time based on life and thought simple things. So Sydney said that he was really incensed. He was really angry with people who said that poetry is the mother of lies. To him, poetry presented a higher level of reality. A speaking picture tells us forms of truth that would be unavailable to raw observation. But what can be said about this is that if you have read a poem, for example, about an old lady, a makcik or a grandma, you have a different idea about the grandmother or the old lady than if you were to look at one. You look at one, you see the line on her face, the gray hairs that she has. She may not be attractive to you. But when you read a poem about grandmother, you know that she has made sacrifices in this world. You know that she is a person who's loving towards her family and so on. She's the matriarchal figure and so on. So you have a different idea about the lady from the poem. Okay, so this is what a poem does. It teaches you to think differently, to see everything from a different light. So the poet's imagination, unchained by limitation of sensory experience, can create realities not yet shown in reality. It can also allow you to create satire. You can make fun of people by feeling history. Okay? You can create your own universe. You can create your own people. You can even make fun of those that exist by creating and writing poems that are satirical. Okay? And nobody can actually send you to prison because of what you have done, because you're not really writing about reality. You're writing about something else. But everyone will know that you're writing about a person that exists or people that exist in real world. Okay? So Sydney says that poetry has some participation of divineness. This is because it shows man something greater than the material world, okay, that you can see. And poetry is how mankind has come to appreciate this world. Because if you look at the Quran, the lines are poetic. This is how we show appreciation for this world. Allah with His infinite wisdom has shown us that people actually appreciate something if it sounds nice, right? If you can feel it in melodic. So you learn from something that sounds nice also. And yeah, so the Greek also have the same ideas about poetry, because they believe that the earliest poets were actually what do you call that, possessed by a divine spirit. Whenever they recited any lines from their poems, they will be possessed by ideas coming from God. And the Arabs also, the Jahiliyas, the Arabs before Islam came, their first son would always be a poet. Okay, and they would praise warriors and important people in their societies, in their tribes. So that was an honorable job, even though it's low paying. Okay, so another critic, I'm really sorry about this, but I have to go through this slide so that we can catch up. with our lessons. Another person that came after Sir Philip Sidney was Joseph Addison. And Joseph Addison wrote on the pleasures of the imagination, where he explores um, the effect that a poem has on people. And he divides this effect, this aesthetic effect, into two. It is there's something called primary pleasure and then secondary pleasure. Primary pleasure is the immediate experience of objects through primary perception. If you look at a pen, for example, or maybe a flower is the better description here, or example. If somebody gives you a rose, okay, you feel happy, right? You feel that a rose is beautiful. You like to see a rose. Yeah? Um, Perhaps because you think that it's being given to you as a token of somebody's love, okay, and friendship and so on. And then, but you can also experience pleasure by looking at a picture of the rose, a painting of the rose. Okay, that is called secondary pleasure. Now, to experience the first pleasure doesn't require a lot of reason because, in fact, it only requires imagination, your imagination. You think that somebody loves you because that person has given you a rose, okay? And you think also that you resemble a rose. You're like the rose, huh? You've been given something that is similar to you. You're as beautiful as a rose. So you like to see or to get hold of a rose. So you experience pleasure. But then in secondary pleasure, when you see a picture of the rose, sometimes you fail to appreciate it because you see that the painter did not use the right brushstroke or wasn't really a skillful painter. But sometimes you feel that he is a skillful painter or she is a skillful painter and the painting is very beautiful. Okay, so you get this appreciation by thinking about the brush strokes, the way the colors are being fused together to create the painting and so on. So it requires knowledge in order to appreciate something using the secondary imagination or secondary pleasure. And can somebody tell me now what is not an inferior imitation of but complements it? Can somebody give me an answer to this question? What
Art.
is okay, no, Farisha? You want to try?
Yes, art is also not an inferior imitation of nature, but complements it.
Yes. So this is what Addison was saying. That art is not an inferior imitation of nature, but complements it. He was looking at a picture that can be pleasurable. Yeah? Um, Now he was also saying that the picture can be pleasurable or agreeable, but the reality can be disagreeable. Okay, can anyone here give me an example of an experience which could be disagreeable in reality, but can be represented in an agreeable form? Can anyone offer me an answer to this question? What it could be disagreeable? Okay, Haruni, because I can see here Haruni. Okay.
There's this thing called the Paris syndrome, where like a lot of people think that going to Paris is such a great experience because Paris is highly romanticized in media and whatnot. But then when they truly went to Paris, it's a very disappointing experience. It's not as good as they thought it would be.
Yeah, I've been to Paris before. Have you been to Paris?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's not. It's not really nice. It's not really romantic. It's quite crowded with
Yeah,
tourists.
they say that it's there's a lot of mugging and it's some parts of it is dirty and all that. So it's not as good as how it is portrayed in the media. So that's why it's
Yeah,
called the Paris syndrome.
yeah. They call it a romantic city, but I find it very when not enough trees in Paris. It can be crowded. Yeah. Anis Amira, can we also hear from you? Thank you, Haruni. Yes, Anis Amira?
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking about black magic because in literature, some of it, like, for example, like in comedy, they would incorporate like black magic using of black magic, but in terms of like the benefits or the good way that affect by using black magic. But in reality, black magic is not. We are not engaging in black magic, and we totally opposed of using black magic in reality. So I think that can be an example of
I,
what.
I don't really understand this example, to tell you the truth. Um, okay, but it's interesting. It's an interesting example. Um, I was thinking more in the line of a horror movie. You love watching horror movies. I love watching horror movies, but I do not want to encounter a ghost. I love watching other people being chased by a ghost. I find that entertaining, but I wouldn't want to be one in one. I wouldn't want to be that person. Okay, so this is how a picture actually makes something disagreeable between a ghost, okay, into something agreeable, watching somebody else make a ghost. Okay, so yes, okay. So thank you, Anis Amira, for the example. Um, So the danger of art in this logic lies in its premise that art is more superior than reality, though Edison cannot explain why mimesis is itself pleasurable. So there is a danger in thinking that art and everything that evokes secondary pleasure is superior than reality or anything that evokes primary pleasure because art itself is deceiving. It can be deceived by what you see in a picture than looking at the real um, person. Okay, in that picture, you can find that there are differences. Okay, so let's go on to uh, theorist, and it's called Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke came up with a book called on a philosophical inquiry into the origins of our ideas of the sublime, the beautiful. It's a very long title, right? So we're looking at he was disagreeing with Plato's idea that art is merely a copy of nature, because he's saying that art has its own role and function. Um, he doesn't believe that art is a copy. It's something else because of the use of techniques and techniques, drawing techniques, and so on. So it becomes something else, and it lends itself to the idea of taste. So, for example, a shoemaker may want an accurate picture of a shoe, but a dancer wants a picture that gives a sense of the shoe's motion and liveliness. So this is an emotional quality rather than a physical one. It's very, um, it's, it's true to today. Whenever we see a person, for example, and if the person were to be painted by different painters, then different paintings would appear of the real person using different techniques and so on. So finally, we have Samuel Johnson. And Samuel Johnson, if you look again at the picture, it tells you something about the man himself. He is reading a book, and therefore he's learned, he's knowledgeable, and perhaps he has some eye problem as well because he's holding the book quite near to his eyes. Okay, so he is the first person to come up with a dictionary of the English language. So he's quite learned in that sense. And he wrote an essay called The Rambler. He wrote an essay in The Rambler. The Rambler is a magazine that he produced for during his time. And then he was the first to write a literary criticism of novels. The first to write, who was the first? Was the first to write a literary criticism of poetry? Can somebody tell me who was the first to write many literary criticisms of poetry? The first for novels is Samuel Johnson, but first for poetry would be the first. Can somebody tell me? In the English society, okay, in the English tradition, who would be the first to write the criticisms of poems? Can somebody tell me? Nobody has any idea? It's actually Sir Philip Sidney. As I said before, there were no literary criticisms on poems before Sir Philip Sidney. Okay, so he was the first to write a book on a book discussing poetry, yeah? An apology for poetry. An apology for poetry was the first work on poems. But the first to write about novels is Samuel Johnson. So Samuel Johnson, so Samuel Johnson novels depended on presenting stories that imitate nature. And it's different from poems because it relies on the principle of realism, in which everything in a novel should correspond to everything that is present in reality. So what this means is that actually there are no similes, there are no metaphors being used in a novel. You cannot compare a person to an animal, and so on. But nowadays you can find different understanding of literature, in the way that some people, some artists like George Orwell, he wrote this book called Animal Farm, and the characters are animals, but the animals correspond to real people. So his work is not realistic. It is satirical, in fact. So Samuel Johnson was actually a believer that novels conveyed reality. And because they conveyed reality, a novel has to be based on the idea that man should behave himself. Mankind should behave themselves. And good art or a good novel has a positive moral message. A bad novel has a bad message. Yeah? So everyone who has done any wrong in a novel must be punished, and everyone who does some good in a novel must be rewarded. So according to Johnson, novels could be more harmful than poetry because novels have a more realistic form, thus more belief for descriptions of real life. So in today's world, we have this fear that novels are damaging to or could potentially damage a society. If you look at the list of works that are banned, you can find in Google books that are banned, and they always contain novels in them. There are some novels like Satanic Verses that are banned in many Muslim countries. There are novels in Malaysia, novels by Faizal Tahrani, yeah, are banned because they supposedly propagate Shia ideology and all that. So novels are considered very good. They could be considered to be very harmful if the message in them are not condoned, by society. Yeah? Okay, they are not endorsed by society. Okay. So, what are often read by the young and ignorant, and Johnson wants, and have the power to lodge ideas firmly in uninformed minds. Okay. What? Can somebody help me? I mean Nabila, yes?
The novel.
Yes. I mean Nabila, I have one mark. So the novels are often read by young and ignorant. Yeah? You see young, when you see not so long ago when people could go to bookshops, they would find many Malay novels, for example. And I have a niece who likes to read novels about love stories and so on. So, I always have this fear that she would read potentially damaging novels that talk about sexual relationship, for example, and so on. So there's always this fear that the young and ignorant, okay, because we always think that young people are ignorant, and this is not the case, right? Some young people are very intelligent, so they are going to be influenced. People think that they are going to be influenced by what they read. So the rule of presenting reality should be banned, according to Johnson, so that novels that deviate from nature when it's necessary to present the proper outcome, where, what is, where, what is the, Christine, Riley?
Where bad behavior is punished and good behavior is rewarded.
Again, sorry, can you repeat that?
Where bad behavior is punished and good behavior is rewarded.
Yes. So bad behavior is punished and good behavior is rewarded. Yes. So we call this, by the way, we call it poetic justice. Okay. It's poetic because it appears only in literature. Sometimes in real life, good people are not rewarded, and bad people are sometimes escape punishment. Okay. But in a novel, um, bad people are always punished and good people are rewarded. As in most novels actually, but not in all. So Johnson argues that ancient Greek and Roman writers also presented the best models of literary art, even though Plato said, Plato said that they didn't show good models of behavior. But Johnson, because he is following Western tradition in venerating, in praising the origins of uh, this tradition, he looks back at the Greeks and the Romans, and he believes that their works are the best for all mankind. So, so in order to become a good writer, also you must know Oedipus Rex, you must know Medea, and so on. So the Odyssey also is important work. Okay. So this is the end. Okay, I am glad we have finished on time. Okay, and then in the next class, which will be on Thursday next week, we will look at another slide. Okay, I have another one on um, humanism, part 3. Okay, but it's only a short slide, and then we'll be moving on to structuralism. Okay, a new lesson. But Tuesday, on Tuesday, I will give to you a YouTube video on structuralism and the last slide. Okay. So anyone here has any question before? Okay. Yes. No, Shamini.
Doctor, sorry to ask, but will you send us the slides or are you just gonna provide us a YouTube link?
The slide I can provide you with YouTube video. Okay. But I normally put the slides on Itatlim. Can you all access Itatlim? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Okay. So you can see the slides on Itatlim. Anyone else with any question? I'm trying to finish 2 slides in our presentation today because we already missed our classes last week. I'm trying to make up, and I think I have made up for the 2 classes. Anyone else with any question? By the way, if you're looking, when one of your assignment is to produce a video of an interview with an NGO, and I've listed down on our WhatsApp all the NGOs that were interviewed. So I expect this time around that you would find other NGOs, okay, other than those mentioned there. I will give you a letter also, a letter that you can pass to the NGOs. So we have first to find out which NGO. I think we can always ask Magna. There are so many NGOs around in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia. Okay. By the way, Mariam, are you at a hotel? Are you at a hotel, Mariam? I'm just curious, because I see you. You seem like you're in a hotel room.
No, it's just my background picture.
Oh, okay. You have a nice room there. Okay, anyone else want to say anything? Okay, so thank you so much for being present. I've taken your attendance also. Please be present in all our classes because we only have one class every week. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much. I'll be saying goodbye to you right now. Yeah? Goodbye. May you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Thank you,
Doctor.
Doctor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Doctor.
Have a good day.